Hi, welcome to this episode where we are going to install Ubuntu 22 on UTM based software. This is a software that provides virtualizations on Apple M2 series and further versions of hardware. So here I'm just going to go ahead and create a virtual machine of Linux. Basically, I'm going to install Ubuntu 22. So I'm not going to change the default values here. I'm just going to select the ISO which has downloaded from Ubuntu website, which is of type ARM64. This is something that is needed. Usually, people on production servers or predominantly on most of the hardware, you would find something like AMD64. But here for Apple series, we need to select ARM64 series of operating system. So I'm going to continue. Memory looks good. CPU, I'm just going to give 2 cores. The disk size, since this is a demo on how to install Ubuntu, I'm just going to give it 15 GB, although it only requires less than 10 GB. I'm going to name it as Ubuntu 2204 VM. The rest all looks good. Let me see if the disk is mounted. So the ISO is being mounted with the CD-ROM. So let's start up the VM. So I'm going to install Ubuntu server here. Okay, the installer is starting off now. It's asking for which language you want to use, so I'm going to select English. Now this ISO was downloaded a few days back, so it's giving me the option to update the installer or proceed without updating the installer. So I'm just going to update the installer. It's better. Now the keyboard layout is going to be English US, so it's all selected as default. So proceeding with that. For this demo, I'm just going to use a minimalistic version of Ubuntu server. You can traverse the options using tab keys or the up and down arrow keys as well. Ethernet, I'm just going to leave it as to the default values. I don't have a proxy, so I'm going to leave it blank. At this screen, it's trying to update all the apt repositories that is referred by the operating system. I'm going to use the entire disk, just given 15 GB of disk space, so that's fine. This is the layout that it's going to be using. So basically, it's going to partition this 15 GB into these different partitions. So you can proceed with done. It's asking me whether I'm sure of it or not. I'm sure, so I'm going to continue. It's asking for the name, so it's going to be Jolie's DevOps Studio, and the server name is going to be Ubuntu 2204. Username, I'm going to select JDev Studio. Password, I'm just going to assign a simple password, JDev Studio itself. I'm now going to select Ubuntu Pro, so I'm going to skip for it. Install SS server, yeah, this could be needed or sometimes may not be needed as well, but I'm going to select yes for it as of now. No additional softwares are needed to be installed, so proceeding with this. So it's going to continue with installing grub, the kernel, and the necessary other softwares needed to run this particular operating system. It's going to do the partitions as well. Looks like it has already done the partition part. It's going to take some time here, so I'm going to pause the video and get back once this phase of installation is completed. Okay, the installation is completed, so it's asking to look at the logs or probably reboot. I'm going to go for reboot right now. Now, one thing to note during the reboot is that the ISO could still be mounted onto the VM. So I'm going to eject this particular ISO so that the VM boots into the disk instead of the CD media. It's taking quite a long time, so I'm going to shut down this VM and then start it up again. Okay, the VM is booted up, so I'm going to use the same username which I had assigned earlier. So it's JDO Studio. So I'm logged in, and I can see that the VM is Ubuntu 22. And let me check the memory. Memory was 4 gigs, so it's pretty much allocated to that. Let me also check the disk. Disk is also 15 gigs, so this is good enough to practice any Linux-based commands or any other things. But you can use this mechanism to provision more VMs, and you can also set up things uh, what you want to practice on your Linux operating systems. So I'm going to shut it down for now. Thank you for watching the video with me.